Good.
feel like I found my people now. You have autistic children on there that are nonverbal. That just means that they can't speak verbally.
Yep.
And then you have lightly verbal autistic children, and then you will also have children that are that can verbalize like me, that can speak.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I have
but
a
it's
nephew. Yeah.
okay. So the whole tapes are just recording these children that have telepathic uh communication with either a family member or somebody close that's with them on a regular basis. And they literally, like, the children will be in one room, like, say this they were in the other room that's on the other side of this wall, and the parent or whatever would be like sitting where I'm at, and they'll just pull out a playing card and they'll ask the kid to tell them what that card is. Now I don't have gifts like that. My gifts are different, but the way that they're connected to the other side is how I've been connected my whole entire life. And
Yeah.
I I know more I've spent more time on the other side is what I call it the other side. That's just the way I describe it. But I've spent more time on the other side than I have in this side. So I feel like I'm not very human. In fact, I've felt alien my entire life. I would be sitting on my bed saying to myself, I have to be in the wrong place. I could not possibly belong here. As a little girl, like, I've had some sense that I really actually belong on the other side, because I was so connected even at that time to the other side.
That's pretty wild. Since we're already rolling, why don't we just keep on going? And so firstly, thanks very much for joining me on the channel today. Now, I just want to, just so you could, the audience can get a bit of a feel for who you are. So could you just introduce yourself and maybe just share what made you want to talk about your experiences with me here today?
Hi, my name is Tammy Cheney, and I tonight would love to share my spiritual experiences, and which began at a really young age. I also had what would be considered a near death experience in my 20s, and I've actually had multiple experiences through my whole life, but that will be the subject of what I'll be talking about today.
All right. Well, we talk a lot about NDEs, so um, maybe if there was some sort of event prior to that that really stands out for you in your early years, and then why don't you just
Mhm.
jump to your NDE and let's talk about that.
Perfect. Okay, so my experiences as far back as I can remember started at the age of 3. Now, I didn't live in a very healthy home, so one of the punishments, I guess you could say, that my mom would do is she would lock me in the food closet, which was basically just this one tall closet with shelves in it, and she'd lock me in the
Gosh.
bottom.
Mm.
And so in that closet, after so many times of her doing it, began I began to be able to speak to this entity that began to speak to me. So that continued on with speaking to this entity. And to me, it seemed normal to me. I didn't realize that, as an adult, I realized that that's not something typically a 3-year-old is doing. But it didn't take me long to figure out that I can continue to speak to this entity even outside the closet. So my natural, regular routine at that point was I would be speaking to this entity every day. I couldn't wait to get up in the morning to speak to this entity. I would just be in constant communication with this entity. So that continued on. And by the time I turned 5 years old, I began to have that's when I first had my first out of body experiences. So what ended up happening is, for me as a 5-year-old, uh, when it happened the first time, basically what happened is my whole body started to buzz. And then all of a sudden I could feel my insides literally go right out of me, and I popped right out of my body. And the feeling of the coming out of my body is or the buzzing, what would be originally what would start scaring me. I didn't know why my body was buzzing, but then when I popped out of my body, that whole feeling of me coming out of myself is what really scared me like really bad. But once I got out of my body, I was able to like, I could see my body laying there on the bed and I could just leave and go right straight through the wall. I could go outside. I could explore my neighborhood. When it started happening at 5, I generally wouldn't go too far, like outside my house. I would stay in the general area of my house. But these out of body experiences started happening continually. Like it wasn't every night. It probably wasn't, twice a week, but it was happening probably at least once a week. I would have these out of body experiences. And one of the things that I can remember about it is sometimes my body would start buzzing hours before it happened. And when I would feel that buzzing, I would automatically just start freaking out inside, scared, because I know that it's going to happen. And I know it won't happen until I go lay down in my bed. So a couple hours would go by and I knew that I was popping out that night and I was already scared, like scared to death. And so these experiences continued to happen throughout most of my early childhood. So I want to say they started at 5, and I want to say that I was still having them by still at between 8 and 10 years old. They might even still been happening after that. I really can't remember. They were just continually happening and I didn't have any control over it. But once
And
I got
sorry,
out,
I'll
that's when
just interrupt you there, Terry. And were you able to tell anyone about them, or was it just something that you kept to
no,
yourself?
no, 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 no. No, I was to be honest with you, okay? I know that this might sound a little bit weird, but I thought everybody else was doing the same thing. And I was just like this scaredy cat or something.
Right.
I literally did not figure out that this wasn't normal until I hit middle school and I started sharing it with a few of my friends. And they were like, yeah, no, we don't do that. So so then I figured out that it was not normal. But going back to once I would pop out and once I was like physically out and I would go outside and start exploring, the feeling that I would have would be like this most peaceful, like it was the most beautiful place that I could go every time I would pop out. I would just be in this beautiful place of just goodness, like the feeling. So once I got out, I was happy, but then I had to go back in. And when I had to go back in, I would literally be fighting. No, no, I don't want to go back in there, and then every time I'd go back in and I would just be so upset that I had to go back and had to leave, this place of just it was like unconditional love. That's the only way I can explain it, like a love that doesn't exist here. And but I did continue to speak to the entity that I had been speaking to I still speak to that entity to this day. And but I later on through my childhood, I don't know what age, maybe between 8 and 10, I didn't grow up in a religious home or anything like that. I just we had no religion in our house. So, but you know how you will hear people when you're a kid say, oh, God's watching you up there or whatever. So I eventually named that entity God because I knew God was out and not here, not, out in a different place. And so I did eventually call that entity God. And so when I first started having the out of body experiences, I was living at one home and then my parents moved to another home. And once they moved to that other home, which was the home that I basically grew up in until I was 15, um, I had a pretty extreme experience that was happening in that home. And now, if I would have known what I know now, I probably would have had a conversation with it. But there was this specific entity that was coming into my home, like I want to say it was almost like physical form, but obviously it wasn't because it was an entity. It wasn't in physical form, but I always heard it like stomping its feet coming down the hallway, and then it would come to my bedroom. I always knew when it was there. And that happened to me probably for a good 3 years. That and it wasn't like it would be maybe a couple times a month or something like that. That I did tell my parents about. I told everybody in the house because it scared the living day. It was actually some of the scariest moments I've had as a child was that entity coming, coming to get me.
Mm,
That's how I
yes.
felt as a little girl. And but my parents, nobody believed me, and they're like, "Oh, you were sleeping, you were dreaming, you were this," and it wasn't true because I even haven't had an instant where I got prepared because for some reason I would have this feeling inside myself throughout the day that I knew that tonight's going to be a night that the entity shows up. I just had this feeling, and so I put a note on top of my nightstand or a piece of paper and a pen on my nightstand, and I was going to write a note when I heard him coming, and I called it a him because it just seemed like a male. And so this one specific night, it was coming, and I got the pen, I put in there, "I'm awake," so that the next morning when I got up and told him the man came again last night, because that's what I called him, the man came again last night. Um, I could show them, look, and I was awake because I wrote this on the piece of paper. But it just they didn't there was no support in it at all. It was they didn't never think anything of it. And now if I
Mm,
mention it to them, they're like, "Oh yeah, we knew all about that entity." Like they heard it too, but they didn't. And they had no clue what was going on. So so as time had went by, I'm gonna jump right now and go into my 20s when I had my near death like experience. It's exactly like a near death experience. And so I ended up living at a group home in my early 20s when I was pregnant for my daughter. And in that group home, it was like a religious based group home, but I didn't know anything about religion or anything like that. And I did start going to the church that they were having us go to because it was part of the rules of the group home. And so in that house, I ended up, all I was doing is just my normal routine for the day. And I went into my room that was assigned to me, and I sat down on my bed, and I literally just leaned back like how I'm leaning back now on the backboard of the bed. And literally, as soon as I leaned back like this, I instantly was gone, and I was instantly like on a whole nother planet. And on this planet it was similar to Earth, but the way that it looked, like, to give you an example, the smell, there was a slight bit of music that was playing, and everything that was in my view was so vibrant and beautiful. And with me were two entities. I had one walking with me on this side, and I had one walking with me on this side. And we just began to, like, it started out where we just begin to walk forward on this dirt road. So as we're walking, I'm so in awe because the colors, like the flowers and the trees and the grass and the leaves and just everything was so vibrant and beautiful. There's no colors on this earth. You'll never be able to see on this earth the colors and the vibrancy of what I saw. And as we're walking, like the flowers, like they were so multiple crystal looking colors on them. I couldn't take my eyes on it. And at that point, we continue to walk forward. And as we're walking forward, I notice over to the right of me was this castle-like structure it was more in a color of black and white is the only way I could describe it. Like everything else was beautifully colored, but that structure was like old stone, like black and white, like dirty white. So it looked like, kind of dirty black and white. That's the only way I can describe it. It was definitely stone. So I stop and, I see that. And then I look over my shoulder just to look to see if there's anything else in my vision. And when I look back, behind me was, I don't even know how many, but it was like thousands, I guess, of just these light beings that were like, they had the profile of a body, but they didn't have no body. And it was just, they were like piled everywhere, just as far as the eye could see behind me. And then as soon as I turned back around to look back forward again, and I looked in my vision in front of me. Now, this wasn't something that I saw right away, but when I looked back, there was this big, gigantic, huge sun is the only way I can describe it. It was like a sun, but it took up the whole vision of where I was looking. That stone structure still over here, flowers and trees are over here, but all of a sudden there's this sun in front of me. And literally, as soon as I saw that sun, I knew it was God. I knew that that was the entity that I had been speaking to my full entire life. And the one thing that I realized and noticed, afterwards, after seeing this whole thing, after coming out of the event, is God wasn't a man figure. He was a light. And so as soon as I see that, as soon as I have the feelings of, oh my gosh, this is who I've been talking to my whole entire life, I instantly look at the guy, I can't remember if I looked this way or this way, but I instantly looked at the entity that was walking with me and I said, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get back and tell everyone, and as soon as I said that, I kid you not, just like that, I was back sitting in my bed, leaned up the same way that I was up against the backboard. And I was like, I was just completely dumbfounded. Like, I could not believe where I was just at. I could not believe, oh my gosh, I have to tell everybody, because that's the last thing I remember saying. And I'm like, I got to tell everybody. And of course, right at that time, I jump up from the bed and I go out to talk to the other girls that are roaming the hallways, and I can't speak. I don't have the ability to speak. That's the only way I can describe it. Like, I couldn't get words out of my mouth. And what was really weird is I feel like the glow of the light came with me somehow. Like there was a light around me. And as I'm passing these girls in the hallway, passing by, we never pass by each other and like not say nothing, not say something to each other. And so I can't talk. Nobody's talking to me. So I just turned right back around and I went in the room and I literally laid in my room for about 45 minutes. And all of a sudden I said to myself, I wonder if I can talk yet. So I just said something simple and my voice came out of my mouth and instantly I was up and I'm like going on and on with these girls. And they thought I was crazy. They thought I lost my mind. They could not, they were like, what are you talking about? They had nobody had any idea. But once that happened to me, it consumed me. It took over my whole mind, body, and soul. I had absolutely no control of myself at all anymore. So then I'm steadfast going to church because I think that church is where I'm going to find people like me. So, so I go
Maybe.
into this, I go into this church and the pastor's telling people, if you want to come and accept God into your life, come up to the pulpit. And I'm clueless about church. Okay. So I'm thinking, oh yeah, I do want God. I'm thinking God that I've been speaking to my whole entire life. I need to go accept him into my life again or whatever, So I'm like, yeah, I'm going up there. So I go up to the front of the stage and I do the whole ritual of whatever they're doing to get you to surrender your life or whatever. But inside me, I'm having a whole nother conversation. And in the midst of that conversation of me surrendering my life back to God, who I've known my whole entire life, that now I know is actually this big, beautiful light and not some man figure. I surrender my life, and literally, I kid you not, I went, I don't know how to explain it, but uh, all of a sudden the room changed. Okay. That's the only way I can describe it. And immediately there was like this white see-through sheet that was covering the whole front of my vision in front of me. And as I'm looking, I can see through the sheet a little bit, and I see that the pulpit to the church is right behind it, but it begins to raise up. And once it begins to raise up, I'm seeing my vision now in front of me vibrant, like how it was in my NDE like experience. Sorry.
Yeah.
And so I can see everything crystal clear, literally. And as it rises up, I turn and look at the people that are sitting in their seats, and all of a sudden I know them. And not only do I know them, I know everything about them. Not only do I know everything about them, but I know everything in the whole entire world now. I know everything, and I don't know how. There's not even human words to even put it into words to tell you everything that I knew. I just knew everything in the whole entire world. And that happened 2 weeks after the NDE like experience. That literally happened 2 weeks later. I went to the church and did that whole routine. Once that happened, I've never been able to switch back over to whoever I was before that. Whoever that person does not even exist anymore. And now I am something completely different. And I have a mission that everybody in the whole entire world needs to taste what it felt like for me in that heaven type experience that I went to, that paradise type experience that I went to. And I have literally uncontrollably not been able to stop it for the last 25 years. It's been 25 years. I can't break out of whatever this is. And so my whole mission, I ended up leaving. I tried to do like the human thing and like go to jobs and pay bills and all that, but I had zero knowledge of how to do that. I don't even know how to do it. So I ended up leaving and just going on the road and just started traveling. And I'm like, okay, I'm just giving myself to you. And whatever you want me to do, I'm going to do. Whatever you want me to say, I'm going to say. Whatever. And I just gave over to it. And I ended up spending a good 7 or 8 years where I just would go out into national forests or whatever, and I would camp. And there would be other people camping, like dispersed in, many different areas. And somehow every person in that campground, and I kid you not, every person in that campground would end up at my camp spot with me. And I would just start cooking for everybody. I'd literally just start throwing food on the fire, and literally like serving these people. Here you go, here you go, here you go. Soon as everybody was done eating, this that has had a hold of me since that day would take over, and literally I would feel this energy go through my head, go through my whole body, and immediately my mouth would just start talking, and it would just start giving all this information out to these people. And this whole audience would be like fully focused on whatever was coming out of my mouth. Now, I wasn't able to comprehend, or I wasn't aware of what was coming out of my mouth. All I could see was that these people were like blown away by whatever's coming out of my mouth. Now that happened for many, many years, up until probably about 3 years ago, that stopped. I haven't had that energy go through my head and do that. But there's one instant that I want to tell you about that I was out. This happened about 5 years ago. I had my 16-year-old son with me who had never been with me on these little adventures that I go on. And I was in just a random Walmart parking lot in North Carolina. It just parked for the night. I might even stay there for 3 nights, but that specific night, there was a man that was sleeping in his vehicle in the parking lot with his dog. And then in the distance and by the way, I have an RV, so I'm traveling in an RV at this point. I wasn't in a car anymore. That's the energies gave me 2 RVs, and I'm on my second RV now, and I've had it for 6 years. So I got them both for free, literally. And so I'm in this random Walmart parking lot in North Carolina. I got my son with me, and then of course this man shows up to my door, and immediately I know that I need to feed him. So I bring him in, I feed him, and lo and behold, the girl that I saw walking across the Walmart parking lot, she's at my door now. So I bring her in and I feed her. Soon as everybody gets done eating, energy comes through my body, my mouth starts speaking. But what happened that time was I split from me, if that makes sense. So now I have the human me standing here. I got the 2 people sitting in front of me there. I got the human me here. And now I got me standing behind me. And so it was like a fully awake out of body experience, because I literally felt myself go whoop and go right behind myself. So now I got me standing behind me. And because I'm standing behind me, I can hear what I'm saying now. So I got me up here, the human side of me up here doing all my hand gestures, whatever, talking to these people. And I'm back behind me and I got my arms crossed and I'm like, where are these words coming from? I don't even know where
Oh,
they're coming from. And the me back here is freaking out about what I'm hearing come out of my mouth. So it was just what an experience. And like these people, like I have randomly been in positions like that where I would have a group of people that of course showed up to my campfire and I fed them and the whole energy thing happened. They would end up following me to the next campsite that I'm going, because I'd only spend like 2 or 3 days, because I I would be so like overwhelmed that I couldn't handle it anymore and I had to leave. And I'd be like, you guys, I gotta go. See you later. And they'd be like, oh, but I'd have random groups that will follow me. Well, this specific group of that situation that I just told you with the man and the woman, they ended up following me to the next place, my next destination, which was only 100 miles away, but they ended up following me there. Once I got there, I had a whole new group that place in my RV. And it's all happening, and whatever that is, I don't even know what to name it. Like I probably watched over 2,000 NDEs now in the last 3 years, and I can't find anybody specifically that has experienced what I've experienced, nor can I say, the closest thing I can say that happens to me is, I guess, maybe I channel. But I never
mm,
hear anybody talk about energy coming through their head and going through their whole body and then it kicking in. It seems like people can just sit here and then all of a sudden channel. But so
yeah.
did you
Well, I think it does sound like because there's different types of. I've spoken to a lot of channels on the. So you have like a trance channel is someone who really kind of loses themselves. They kind of step to one side and they're not really aware of what is going on at all
Mhm,
when they're channeling. So
mhm.
that does sound a lot like what you're
I guess
describing.
that does. Yeah, I guess that does.
Yeah,
I didn't even know
yeah.
that there were
Versus
multiple channelings.
yeah. Okay. Well, this is just labeling, right? But that's what it sounds like to me. Versus a conscious channel is more someone who can kind of be is conscious of what's being said, but normally after a while, what was said fades pretty fast. So I've had people like that, and then you kind of have there's a spectrum in between those two as well. So some people
Right.
know that they're talking, but they don't
Mhm,
remember anything that was said. Like say Bashar I forget
mhm.
what the name of the person who channels Bashar, that's kind of an example of that. He doesn't really remember what was said. I mean,
Mhm.
even Esther Hicks, channeling
Right, right.
Abraham,
Yeah.
she would, she's kind of aware what was being said, but very much was kind of in the background, and you could sort of
Mhm.
see this shift as Abraham kind of took over, and then Esther sort of
Right.
stepped to one side. And I'm pretty sure she still does that. So I think
Mhm.
that sounds like what's going on with you. And then you had this instant where you were bilocated. So um,
Mhm.
there's in the books by the Far Journeys, Robert Monroe. In his books, he talks about this. I'm pretty sure we're being bilocated, so you
Mhm.
have consciousness. We all kind of focus our consciousness into our body. Well, this is my interpretation anyway. So
Mhm.
during our human existence, our consciousness is focused here in our human body, but we can focus outside of that, and then generally with an out of body experience like you have, that's
Mhm.
you're gone and nothing really is animating your body just per se, so it's just laying there. But
Mhm.
in that particular instance, your body was being animated by another consciousness. So
Mhm.
then when you bilocated, you could you could see that, you could witness that going on, which is pretty wild. I've not heard of that before,
I
actually.
know, me either. As much as I've studied on it, I haven't found it. And it only happened that one time. It never happened again. But to this day, it's 5 years later, and I can't stop talking about that experience where I disconnected like that. Like my out of body experience as a child, I physically felt, I mean, as time went by, the physical feeling, it started to become normal. So it wasn't so physical to me. But when it first started, I physically felt, like this popping out of my body feeling.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
it
yeah.
wasn't like that. I was just all of a sudden standing behind myself. But I guess that would be an out of body experience. It was just during the day, bright sun, standing in the, like wide awake, everything. So,
Yeah. Yeah, well,
mhm,
I don't think there necessarily has to be any sort of, I mean, but for speaking from my own experience, I've only had one out of body experience, but there wasn't
mhm,
any real kind of ceremony about it, like a
mhm,
lot of people describe, buzzing, etc. I
right.
was I was
Mhm,
literally 1 minute there, and I was remembering, okay, I want to have an out of body experience when I woken up, and I was straight away, in the
mhm.
downstairs bathroom, thinking, wow, that actually happened, and I did it. But
Right.
there wasn't any, it was an instant. There wasn't any kind of, like, gradually getting there, like, so I think that once again, there's this spectrum,
Mhm,
that there isn't, it's whatever happens to work for you, and for some people it's voluntary, and for some people it's very involuntary, like in your description.
right, right.
But
Yeah.
and some I've heard some people describe, like, they kind of exit their head chakra, that was kind of always made a bit of sense to me that that would occur, but then other people, it's like they're in their stomach, or it's somewhere else, and
Mhm,
there's so many. I think for every person on earth, there's probably a unique way that we would,
mhm.
have that kind of experience, I guess.
Right,
So
right.
did people give you some feedback about what you were saying to them, on any of these occasions, when you're out in your campsite?
No, these
Obviously, there was something valuable to them.
I didn't know. No, nobody's ever come to me and conversated, but literally once that would happen, like these people would be like just lavishing me with gifts. They would be like, I can't even explain it. Like they were all like, the whole group, whoever it was just all of a sudden completely and fully in love with me or something. You know what I mean? That's the only description I can give it. And they would like, I'd start out collecting my own wood for my campfire. And after experience like that, people are coming to me, hey, do you need any wood? We're going to go get some wood. Do you want, you know what I mean? They would just be like super overly nice to me in a very over dramatic way that I can't even explain. And it would just be like, just everybody all of a sudden it was like walking around like everybody was just full of just so much unconditional love. We're all just unconditional love. That's the only way I could describe it. They just became so loving. And I know some of those times that some of these places that I camped at, I know that some of those people that were amongst like the group at my camp were probably humanly not very good people, like probably had warrants out for their arrest, or, a lot of them out there that are staying in the national forest are out there for a reason. And it ain't just to hug a tree. you know, they would be out there hiding. And it didn't matter. Like if they were like the hardest, meanest person in the world, they all of a sudden have tapped into the most unconditional loving part of themselves. And that's what they're portraying to me now, and everybody's loving one another there, and can't wait to get, I'm like trying to go to bed, I got to go to bed now. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And like, they'd already be at the camp, starting my fire for me before I even got out of bed. You know what I mean? Like they just stayed with me all day, every day until I literally left. So it was just it was honestly honestly, it was very mystical and magical to me, because I felt like these people are like the nicest people I've ever met in my entire life, and they live out in the woods. Do people know these people live out here? They're the nicest people in the whole entire world, and they live out in the woods, you know? So it was quite the experience. And I did that for several years. I can't even remember how many years now, but it was probably 4 or 5 years straight that I just continued to go. I've been around the whole United States now, like if you look at my trip thing on Google and you look at it, it's just dots all the way around, and then dots piled on dots piled on dots, the whole United States. Because I just kept going. Like I had never experienced what I was experiencing, and it would happen everywhere I went. And it was such an unbelievable experience. Like I couldn't stop talking about it because it was so beautiful, and I didn't know what was so special about it that I was having these experiences, I couldn't figure it out because I didn't know what I was saying. I just knew that whatever I was saying just blew these people away, and they're like practically freaking treating me like I'm their master or something, and that's why I had to get out, because they became too consuming. Like it's every day, these people are in my face every day. So after like 3 or 4 days, I'm like, hey, you guys, it's time for me to go now. I got to move to my next destination. And I never knew where I was going next. I would just drive. And once I got to a place that looked like a place, I'm like, yep, looks like I'm going to stay here. Let me see if there's camping in the area. And there always was. I've spent most of the time out west. So, there's just BMI lands and just all kinds of camping out there. Everywhere you go, you can just pull off in any set of national forest woods and camp.
So tell us about how you supported yourself during that time. I'm curious as to
It would
how you
literally
managed to
be
do it.
random acts of kindness.
Right.
Just random acts of kindness everywhere I went, just random acts of kindness. Anybody that I would talk to, if I would tell them, hey, yeah, I'm staying out, I'm heading out to the forest, I'm feeding people out there and giving them messages, people would just donate to me. Like I just continually had donation after donation after donation. And if I needed food, I had no problem with going into wherever the local food bank was, or anything like that. And plus I always had food money, like a certain amount of money monthly. I always had that just they give you here. So I had that. But
Mhm.
once that ran out, I didn't have a problem with going to a food bank and picking up more food, just because I
Mm.
knew that once I got to my destination, wherever that was, I knew that I was going to have to feed people. I knew there was going to be people there, and they were going to end up at my camp. And I never had to go out and get these people ever. They would just like wander over to my camp somehow, and then we'd end up being together for the next 3 or 4 days. But it was just nonstop. It was constant. Like how I got my first RV was we ended up breaking down. We got rescued by some people, local people there. They brought us to their home. Um, the one of the people that were with me at that time was somebody that I met on the road. So the lady was talking about how she wanted to get her roof redone because she's got a little bit of leaking going on. And we just all of a sudden were like, oh, we'll put a roof on for you. I've never put a roof on my whole entire life. I don't know how to put a roof on, but all of a sudden I just knew that I needed to put a roof on their house. So me and my friend got up there. We literally ripped up her whole roof, threw it off the side of the house, took plywood, put sprayed installation in there, put plywood back on top, and then rolled out. I mean, it was simple. Like, it's really not hard to put a roof on. So we put this roof on, and in conversation that I had a couple days before of us being there, I had said, yeah, I have an RV coming because Spirit, like whoever is God, whatever, told me that I was going to be getting an RV soon. I didn't know where I was going to get it from or who I was going to get it from, but I must have told 100 people. I'm like, yep, I got an RV coming. I don't know when it's going to come, but I got an RV coming. And what ended up happening was we do this roof on this lady's house. And just at one night when we were sitting out eating dinner or whatever, I was like, yeah, I got an RV coming. I don't know where it's going to come from. Same line that I've been telling hundreds of people. And 2 or 3 days later, her brother shows up, catches wind that we did it was his sister's house. Mm-hmm. And he was like, oh, I've heard that you guys have an RV coming. And I was like, yeah, I do. And he was like, well, I got it for you. Come with me. And he freaking took us like down the road and said, there you go. Graham, just a beautiful RV, runs perfect, starts right up. Perfect. So that's how I got my first RV.
Wow.
But but I would be doing random acts of kindness for people everywhere I go. If self told self to do something for somebody, I just did it. No questions asked, whatever it was, I just did it. And out of that random act of kindness, it would always be something spectacular that would come to me. And I lived that way for, like I said, for 4 or 5 years, I lived that way, and it was beautiful. And some of the best times of my whole entire life, if you want me to be honest with you. But so anyway, so I want to jump up and tell you about one of my experience that I have that I haven't told anybody really publicly, just my family, only because my family was part of it. But just my family, just because I've literally been processing this for the last 5 years, what happened in this experience. It's never happened again, by the way. So me and my kids are sleeping in the RV, and I got one kid up in the bed with me, one kid down in the middle bed, and then one kid in the back bed. And between 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, all of a sudden my dogs, I have 2 little ankle biter dogs, and they're just barking and barking and barking at the door. Now, where we were parked at, we were in absolutely the middle of nowhere, surrounded by forest. And other than possibly a wild animal being out there was nothing outside that door that exciting that woke my dogs up. So me and my son that was up in the top bed, we both sat up, and of course we're yelling at the dog, stop barking. And then my son that's in the lower bed there sat up, and we're all simultaneously yelling at the dog, stop barking, get up here, and they just would not budge. Like, they did not even budge with us telling them. So I didn't do anything more than, so I'm laying on the bed this way while sitting up. I turned my legs this way and put them down like this. And as soon as my legs went to the side of the bed, I literally felt a force push me off the bed. And I kid you not, I flew off that bed like Superman. Like, my whole body just flew off the bed like Superman.
Wow.
And I fell in this portal that was a bottomless black pit. And I was falling and I was falling fast, and I'm grabbing with my hands like this, trying to grab on anything I can to stop it. And I got I got my toes pointed down like this, trying to touch anything underneath my feet. And there was nothing there. And so as I'm falling and falling fast, might I add, and, clawing on anything I could that wasn't there, I said to myself, when am I going to hit the floor? It's only right there. Cause literally from the top bed to the floor, it was like maybe 4 feet, it's not, the bed's not up that high. And so as soon as I said that, I instantly came out of the bottomless black pit, instantly hit the real floor, and I broke both bones in my arm hitting the floor.
Oh,
So, and my dogs were still barking. They didn't even budge. They're still barking at that door. So broke arm and all. I tell my son in the lower bed, I was like, give me a light so I can see what these dogs are barking at. And so I break open the door and I look out there. There was absolutely nothing out there. I looked under my RV. I did all the way around the whole vision around us, because if there's an animal, you'll see the shiny eyes.
mhm.
And so I come back in. I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys, I just fell in a bottomless black pit and I broke my arm. I was like freaking out, and my arm was kind of discombobulated, so you could see that it was broke. And so I ended up having that experience, which brought on a after experience. So I ended up getting my hand casted up because I broke both bones, like I said. And soon as I get back to my RV, something about the cast is suffocating me. That's the only way I can describe it. I could not breathe with this cast on my arm. So I'm like panicking. I'm like, why can't I breathe? Like, why can't I breathe? So ultimately I ended up going back to the hospital, getting another cast, freaking out after I left the hospital because I couldn't breathe again. They sent me to a specialist, got a third cast on. And once I got the third cast on, it became more intense because this guy put the cast on my arm so tight, like snug, that it was like fully putting me into like meltdown. And by that time I hadn't got much sleep because I can't sleep with this cast not giving me air. So what ended up happening is they had to take the cast off, and I just had this little wrap thing on me so that if I start feeling uncomfortable, I could just take it right off. And but what ended up happening to me physically was I began, and I know that this is going to sound weird, and this is why I don't tell people this when I'm like maybe speaking on a podcast or something. I don't tell people this part because I'm just still feeling comfortable enough now to say it. But what would happen is I would feel like a tarantula type spider crawling up my leg. It would come all the way up, all the way up. And as soon as it hit my chest, I was instantly thrown back into that bottomless black pit, instantly back in the bottomless. And I would just start freaking out that I'm back in this pit again. Ended up going to the hospital 3 times before I came to the conclusion in my head, there is nothing these doctors are going to be able to do for me. They kept saying I was having a panic attack, and I knew I wasn't having a panic attack. Why am I feeling a spider crawl up my leg and come to my chest? You know what I mean? I knew something. It was almost like something was attached to me. I have to be honest with you. I feel like something was attached to me because of the feeling of the spider coming all the way up and then come into my chest. And I knew after the 3rd time that I went to the hospital, all these doctors wanted to do was put me on some kind of anti or whatever calms you down. I don't know what they are. I don't take any type of medication ever. And so I knew right then and there, as I sat in the hospital bed waiting for these people to release me, I said, there's no way, there is nobody here on the face of this earth that's going to be able to help me through what I'm going through right now. I'm going to have to do this all on my own. And literally, I fought this entity or whatever it was for 3 months solid. It was happening every day, throughout the day, guaranteed at night when I would lay down to go to sleep, it was going to happen. And what I would do is, and now I have to be honest with you, I call it a gift. It can be called whatever anybody wants to call it, but um, I knew how to leave myself if I wanted to leave myself. And what I mean by that is I literally just go from here to just right outside myself, kind of a thing. Like I'm right outside my skin. I don't know how to explain it. So I knew that the only way that I was going to be able to beat this was to not allow it to continue to control me in terror and fear. So what ended up happening is, of course, that night after making that decision at the hospital that there's nobody going to be able to help me, I went home that night. I knew right away, as soon as I laid down to go to sleep, one was going to start happening to me. So of course it started to happen to me, and I would just go, whoop, and I would just be right here. I would be just right outside myself. And because I was just right outside myself, I couldn't feel the feelings of how it was affecting me. So I would be able to see myself going through the experience. That's the only way I can explain it. I could see myself from here, right outside myself, going through the experience and the whole emotion, because what would happen at the end when it was done, like I was done being in the black bottomless pit, my whole body would start to convulse like a what are those things called? A seizure. My
A
whole
seizure, right?
body
Yep.
would start shaking uncontrollably like a seizure. And it would slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down, and all the way to where my whole body was now calm. And that entity would leave me. So I was able to experience that right outside myself where I was not experiencing it. I was just seeing what was happening to me. So I knew,
Mhm.
like, I'd be talking to God right there, and I would be watching myself, my body go through the motion, and I would be like, oh, good. I'm at the shaking part. So it's about to be done. It's about to be done. I'd be talking to God saying, yep, it's about to be done. It's like him and I were like pallid on right outside myself. And I'm like, yep, there it is. Okay. My body's shaking. Okay. So it's almost done. Okay. Perfect. I can go back. And I would just go back. And I did that for 3 months solid. And the only way that I can describe it is all of a sudden I woke up one morning and I realized it didn't happen to me the night before. Literally, I was like, oh my gosh, it didn't happen to me last night. I wonder if it's going to happen to me today, because it would happen throughout the day too. So I got through the whole day, and, and then the next day and the next day, and all of a sudden it was gone. And that was 5 years ago, and it's never happened to me again. So I think what happened is because I was not allowing it to affect me the way that it was, because it was very scary being thrown back in that pit.
Mhm.
Because I wasn't allowing it to control me anymore and I was exiting myself, um, it had to leave. That's the only way it didn't have no power over me anymore, I guess. That's the only way I
Mm.
can describe it. But I've had multiple experiences that just I could probably do an interview with you for the next 6 months telling you how many different experiences that I went through. But those were the ones that I picked for tonight.
I was just thinking, what seems obvious to me is that there's a lot of negative energy and fear and those sort of things, and I think that there are both sides of the spiritual world. There's negative energy, there's positive energy, and there are
Mhm.
things that actually feed off that fear. So it kind of makes sense that you were able to extract yourself from experiencing things in that way, and then
Mhm.
it didn't generate as much power or energy. I suppose it was like, oh, I just got to move on because this one is like a waste of time now. That's kind of
Right,
how I think.
exactly. It was like, she's a waste of time. We can't get her anymore. And then it just left and never happened again.
Yeah. So did you think to like your entity friends that you call God? Did you ever uh, go, okay, can you help me out here because this is really not fun?
Well, I think that that's how I got just outside myself, because I was like, I need you to
Okay.
help me here. I need some help
Right.
here.
Okay.
And I think that
Yeah.
that's
And
how because I didn't think of it myself to just go outside myself. I believe I was all I had was the knowledge of there is nothing anybody else in this world is going to be able to do for me. I'm going to have to do this myself. And it just happened to be
Mm,
that night. And I'm like, all right, I can't be a part of this. I got to come out. I can't do this. And somehow I came just right outside myself. Like literally,
mhm.
there's a realm that's just right outside yourself. And then there's realms that's over here. And then there's realms that's far away. Like there's so many, I've been to so many multiple different realms. I'm going to tell just one more experience if that's okay. Only because
Sure.
it's only happened to me once. I had one specific astro projection. And the reason why I call it astro projection is because, I went from one place to instantly being somewhere else. So what ended up happening that night is I was in my bed in my RV out in Colorado. And then I went from being in my bed to instantly being in my kid's house, which that's where I'm at right now I'm at my kid's house. And I'm walking around in the living room out there. And when I was walking around, I noticed that my son Ezekiel was up and he was up on the computer. Everybody else was in bed. I watched him get up. I followed him to get up, go to the refrigerator. He pulled something out. I can't remember what it is now, but I could remember then. And then I went to walk back into the bedroom where the other kids were. And I opened up the door, and outside their window was another person out of their body, basically, that astral projector or something. And when they saw me, they all of a sudden realized, oh my gosh, she can see me. And and I heard him say that, but not with his mouth. And I was like all freaked out that this man was outside my kid's window. But when he said that, I realized, wait a minute, he's doing the same thing that I'm doing. But why is he outside my kid's window, And so I ended up coming back into the living room, and then all of a sudden I was instantly back at myself. So of course the next morning I call my son. I'm like, were you up last night? Were you the only one up? Were you sitting on the computer? Did you go to the refrigerator and do this? And he's like, yeah, mom, actually I did. And yes, I was the only one up. I was like, oh my gosh, I astral projected to you. And I said, I went into the kid's bedroom where the other boys were. And I said, there was a man outside your window. Like I was all creeped out that this man was outside my kid's window. I'm going to be honest with you. I was all creeped out, and he knew he could see me too, and even made the comment, oh my gosh, she's astral projecting too. She's out of body
Uh-huh.
too. So that was probably one of the most recent experiences like that. And that was probably only, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago. That's the last like profound. I mean, I have downloads that are constantly given to me, but I can't even put it in human words to explain it. So I can't even go into any of that. I know what it is inside me, but I don't know how to tell it. I guess it will come out whenever it's supposed to come out, whatever that is. But that's the last most like profound thing, I guess you could say, out of body ish that has happened to me, and that was just maybe 2 years ago.
Mm. There's some great books by, his name is Jürgen Ziewer. It's like Jurgen Ziewer. I can't remember how to pronounce, how to spell Ziewer. Anyway,
Mhm,
he talks a lot about, he ended up writing 3 books, his experiences with, being out of body or astral projecting as a result of really deep meditation. And
mhm,
how he would often see you wouldn't often see you'd see a lot of people in the astral plane because,
mhm,
the way I look at it is like we have our physical plane, the astral plane.
mhm,
Initially, it's on a spectrum, and the parts that are very close to the physical plane look pretty similar. That's where I ended up when I went out of body. And you
mhm,
can see other people in there. Most of them are asleep and, dreaming, whatever.
mhm,
Occasionally, this who actually is having a conscious astral projection, and that sounds like
mhm,
what you saw, and he talks about that in his
mhm,
books, which is found fascinating. And the other thing he talked about was something else he mentioned was that in some planes, how things are so much more vibrant, like colors are just
mhm,
indescribably brilliant, and the feeling that you have this sort of all-encompassing love that you have, and
mhm,
yeah, it's
mhm.
fascinating. So I'm just a little conscious of the time, Tammy. Great stories, and I'm sure there are other
Thank
people who
you.
have had similar experiences that will get something from them. So tell us about how can people get in touch with you if they want to ask you questions, or and what else have you got going on? Are you thinking about
Okay.
writing a book? Have you written a book? Have you got anything else? Like if people want to just say, okay, well, how do I want to talk to
Okay,
Tammy. How do I
so
do that?
I just recently started a podcast with my best friend, and so we are now doing interviews for those that have had near death experiences, any type of astral projection, out of body, um, just everything that encompasses that that is considered spiritual and not physical. And so we just recently started it. We got probably about 6 videos up right now, and you can find me there if you want to visit the channel. The channel is All Seeing Addict, the letter A, capital I, small LL, all together one word, capital SEEING, and then capital ATTIC, all one word. And so you can find me on YouTube there, but we also have a All Seeing Addict Facebook. So you can definitely find me there and definitely message me there.
Okay, excellent. So I'll put that in the show notes for you. And is there like any messages that you want to share with people before we wrap up the conversation today?
Well, I definitely am part of the movement that's going on, the shift that's going on to bring worldwide healing, and I am just a full supporter of let's heal the whole world. Let's heal the whole world. If enough of us stand up, it will happen. So worldwide healing,
Okay.
that's what I'm here for.
All right, good for you. We need more people like it too. All
Mhm.
right, Tammy, it's been my great pleasure to have you on the show today. Thanks for giving up your time and being willing to tell your stories. So some of them were pretty hair raising, and good luck as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You have a great night.